For over 40 years, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone lived as the biggest enemies in Hollywood, and now at 77, Arnold is finally breaking his silence with words nobody saw coming. Before we dive in, tap that subscribe button right now, hit the like, and join the family for the full untold truth. Arnold meets Stallone. The two men first crossed paths at the 1977 Golden Globe Awards, where Arnold won Best Acting Debut for Stay Hungry, while Stallone was riding the massive success of Rocky, which had earned over $225 million worldwide, on a budget of just $1 million. Arnold was 29 years old, still carrying his 7 Mr. Olympia titles as his main credential, while Stallone at 30 was already a nominated screenwriter and the biggest new face in Hollywood. Behind the glamour of that ceremony, industry insiders noted that the room was already split into 2 clear camps, with older Hollywood backing Stallone and the younger generation curious about Arnold. According to Arnold's own 2023 Netflix documentary, the meeting was cold from the first second, with Stallone reportedly viewing the Austrian bodybuilder as a gimmick rather than a real actor. Photographers that night captured only one blurred image of the two men standing within 10 feet of each other, and no handshake was ever exchanged between them. Arnold later admitted he left that ceremony feeling humiliated and made a private promise to himself that he would one day stand taller than Stallone in every possible way. Friends of Arnold from that era have confirmed that he wrote Stallone's name inside his personal training journal as motivation for the next 5 years straight. That single night planted the seed for 40 years of open warfare between the two biggest action stars the world had ever seen. Hollywood historians now mark that 1977 evening as the exact starting point of the most explosive celebrity feud of the 20th century. The 1980s rivalry. Between 1982 and 1990, Arnold and Stallone turned the box office into a personal battlefield, releasing 24 action films between them and pulling in a combined total of more than $2 billion in worldwide ticket sales. Stallone fired first with Rambo: First Blood in 1982, and Arnold answered with Conan the Barbarian the same year, each film pushing the other to add more muscle, more weapons, and higher body counts on screen. Studio executives at Warner Brothers and Carolco Pictures openly admitted in the late 1980s that they used the rivalry as a marketing weapon to boost ticket sales every summer season. Reports from Muscle and Fitness magazine in 1985 confirmed that both stars were measuring their biceps against each other, with Arnold at 22 inches and Stallone pushing to reach 19. Trainers hired by Stallone were reportedly paid bonuses of up to $50,000 for every inch of muscle they helped him gain during that decade. Their obsession was so extreme that Stallone's Rambo 2 killed 69 enemies on screen, so Arnold made sure Commando killed 74. Film historians have since ranked the 1980s Arnold vs. Stallone era as the highest-grossing personal rivalry in the entire history of Hollywood cinema. The rivalry was no longer about acting, it was about domination, and Hollywood had never seen two men burn this much money and ego on beating each other. Merchandise sales from their 1980s films alone crossed $500 million combined, turning both men into billion-dollar global brands before the decade even ended. Which of these 1980s action films do you still watch today? Drop the title in the comments below. Stallone's movie trick. In 1992, Arnold pulled off what many industry insiders call the greatest career sabotage in Hollywood history, tricking Stallone into starring in Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. According to Arnold's own confession on The Howard Stern Show in 2015, he heard the script was being offered around town and deliberately spread word that he wanted the role badly, knowing Stallone would jump at anything Arnold was chasing. The script had already been rejected by 4 other major action stars before Arnold began his fake interest campaign in the trade papers. Stallone signed the deal within days, and the film released to a devastating 5% Rotten Tomatoes score, and grossed only $28 million against a $30 million budget, becoming one of the most mocked films of Stallone's entire career. Critics, from the Los Angeles Times and Roger Ebert, both listed the film in their worst movies of 1992, adding public humiliation to the financial disaster. Arnold has publicly admitted that he laughed for weeks after the release, calling it his personal victory in the war. He even reportedly kept a framed newspaper review of the film hanging in his private office at his Santa Monica production company for years afterward. Stallone later confirmed the trick in a 2019 Variety interview, calling it the moment he realized just how deep Arnold's hatred went. Industry analysts have estimated that the film set Stallone's career back by nearly 3 full years, costing him at least $20 million in lost future roles. The prank cost Stallone millions in reputation and box office standing during a critical career window. Their personal feud. Beyond the movies, the personal hatred between Arnold and Stallone ran so deep that they refused to attend the same parties, award shows, or industry events for nearly 15 years straight. Publicist reports from the late 1980s show that both camps required guest lists to be checked in advance, and if one was invited, the other would immediately decline. Event organizers in Beverly Hills reportedly kept 2 separate VIP entry gates during major galas, just to make sure the 2 men would never cross paths accidentally. Arnold reportedly called Stallone short, ugly, and untalented in private conversations that later leaked through Planet Hollywood staff, while Stallone fired back by mocking Arnold's Austrian accent and calling him a robot who could not act. Tabloid magazines like the National Enquirer sold record-breaking issues during the late 1980s by printing every insult the 2 men exchanged through the press. The tension reached its peak in 1990 when both men were photographed at the same restaurant in Beverly Hills and refused to look at each other for the entire evening. White staff at the restaurant that night later told reporters they had never seen such a heavy silence between 2 celebrities in their careers. Insiders described the atmosphere as ice-cold, with Stallone leaving early to avoid a public scene. Security guards hired by both stars during that period were reportedly instructed to physically block the other man from approaching within 20 feet under any circumstance. Their hatred was so well known in Hollywood that directors avoided even mentioning one name in front of the other during meetings. Why they clashed. The real reason behind the clash was never just about ego. It was about 2 completely different paths to the top of the same mountain. Stallone was a self-made writer who had lived out of his car and sold his dog for $25 before Rocky changed his life in 1976, and he saw acting as an art form built on struggle and storycraft. Stallone reportedly bought that same dog back for $15,000 just weeks after Rocky became a hit, showing how deeply he valued the struggle behind his rise. Arnold arrived in America in 1968 with $20 in his pocket, built his fame through bodybuilding, and viewed acting as a business to be dominated through marketing, physique, and box office numbers. Arnold openly told reporters in the early 1980s that he treated Hollywood the same way he treated the Mr. Olympia stage, as a war to be won through pure discipline. Stallone resented Arnold for skipping the acting craft, and Arnold resented Stallone for looking down on him as a bodybuilder pretending to be a movie star. Acting coaches from that era have said the 2 men represented the biggest philosophical divide the industry had seen since the days of Marlon Brando versus John Wayne. Their entire clash came from 2 men who wanted the same crown, but believed the other did not deserve to wear it. Psychologists studying celebrity rivalries have pointed to Arnold and Stallone as a textbook case of 2 opposite personalities forced into the same narrow arena of fame. Whose path to fame do you respect more, Stallone the writer or Arnold the bodybuilder? Tell us below. Becoming business partners. In 1991, Bruce Willis, Demi Moore, and investor Robert Earl launched the Planet Hollywood restaurant chain and demanded that both Arnold and Stallone come on board as founding celebrity partners with equal ownership stakes. The 2 men signed contracts worth an estimated $7 million each in stock options, forcing them into the same boardrooms, promotional tours, and international launches for the first time in their lives. The first joint meeting between Arnold and Stallone at the Planet Hollywood offices reportedly lasted only 12 minutes, with both men refusing to sit at the same side of the table. The chain expanded to 87 locations across 30 countries at its peak in 1998. And Arnold has since said the shared success became the first real conversation the 2 ever had as equals. By 1996, both stars were pulling in millions in annual dividends from the chain, giving them a financial reason to protect the partnership rather than destroy it. They opened restaurants together in London, New York, Paris, and Tokyo, standing side by side for photos that shocked fans who remembered the 1980s hatred. Fans lined up for over 8 hours at the New York opening, just to catch a glimpse of the two rivals standing peacefully in the same room. The business partnership slowly forced them to see each other as men rather than enemies, and industry insiders point to this decade as the true beginning of their reconciliation. Bruce Willis has since said in multiple interviews that watching Arnold and Stallone shake hands at the first launch felt like witnessing the end of a Cold War. Money did what Hollywood diplomacy never could. The Expendables reunion. In 2010, Stallone made the single biggest peace offering in action movie history by casting Arnold in The Expendables, a cameo that reportedly paid Arnold just $1 as a symbolic gesture of friendship. The film grossed $274 million worldwide on an $80 million budget, and Arnold returned for The Expendables 2 in 2012 with a full role that paid him $3 million for roughly 6 minutes of screen time. Stallone personally rewrote the script pages for Arnold's return appearance, adding lines that referenced their old rivalry in a way that made global audiences cheer inside theaters. Stallone publicly credited Arnold with saving the franchise appeal, and Arnold has said the calls from Sly came right after his political career ended in 2011, when nobody in Hollywood was answering his messages. Arnold has since called that phone call from Stallone the single most important professional lifeline he received during the hardest 12 months of his adult life. The two shared screen time for the first time in over 30 years, delivering lines that fans had waited an entire lifetime to hear. Ticket sales analytics from opening weekend showed that scenes featuring Arnold and Stallone together caused the loudest audience reactions ever recorded in an action movie test screening. Behind-the-scenes photos showed them laughing, joking, and eating meals together on set. Crew members from The Expendables 2 have said the two stars often stayed on set hours after filming ended, sharing old stories from the 1980s until well past midnight. What the world saw was a genuine friendship rebuilt through one film franchise. Their friendship today. Today, Arnold and Stallone speak on the phone almost every week, and both men have publicly described each other as their closest friend in the entire industry. In a 2023 interview with Variety, Stallone confirmed that Arnold was one of the first people to call him after his son Sage passed away in 2012, at just 36 years old, showing up at the funeral quietly without press coverage. Arnold reportedly stayed at the Stallone family home for 3 straight days after the funeral, helping with private arrangements away from the press cameras. Arnold has visited Stallone during 2 separate hospital stays over the past decade, and Stallone attended Arnold's 75th birthday party in July 2022 alongside just 40 invited guests. At that birthday party, Stallone reportedly gave a private speech that moved Arnold to tears in front of every single guest in the room. Both men now train together occasionally at Gold's Gym in Venice, California, the same gym where Arnold built his physique in the 1970s. Members of Gold's Gym have said the two legends often finish their workouts by sharing breakfast at a nearby diner where they sit for hours reliving old memories. Their bond has become one of the most talked about friendships in modern Hollywood history. Fans across the world now flood social media every time the two stars post a photo together, with one recent picture crossing 5 million likes within 24 hours. If you had to pick one word to describe their friendship today, what word would you use? Share it in the comments. Arnold finally speaks. At 77 years old, Arnold Schwarzenegger has finally opened up in his most emotional interview to date, admitting that he spent 30 years of his life obsessing over destroying a man who turned out to be his brother. Speaking on the Arnold's Pump Club podcast in 2024, he confessed that Stallone was the better actor from the very beginning, and that jealousy was the fuel behind every single decision he made in the 1980s. Arnold revealed on that same podcast that he watched every single Stallone film in secret during the 1980s, just to study what made his rival so powerful on screen. Arnold revealed that he now regrets the wasted years and the cruel words, saying that he lost 3 decades of friendship over pure ego and pride. He also shared that he wrote Stallone a private letter of apology in 2019 that ran over 4 pages long, listing every mistake he felt he had made. He described Stallone as one of the kindest and most loyal men he has ever met, a man who forgave him completely once the walls finally came down. Stallone reportedly framed that apology letter and keeps it in his home office as a reminder of how far the two men have come together. Arnold ended the interview by saying that at 77, the only rivalry left in life is the fight against time itself, and he wants Sly beside him for every remaining year. He closed the conversation by telling listeners that if he could send one message to his younger self, it would be to hug Stallone at that 1977 Golden Globe ceremony instead of walking away in silence. From bitter enemies to brothers for life, Arnold and Stallone proved that even 40 years of hatred can turn into the deepest friendship when pride finally steps aside. If this journey moved you, smash that subscribe button, tap the like, and stay with us for more untold Hollywood truths.